Welcome back to a brand new video. My name is Shanjai. Welcome to this video. This will be a continuation of the previous video, which was to create a social media application backend using GraphQL and Nodejs. So in our previous live stream, which was yesterday, we built out certain functionalities such as sign up, sign in, and fully authorized and authenticated. We also created create post functionality and also to view all of the posts. We also created custom directives for using GraphQL in order to only authorize people who are signed in to create posts. So we did all that functionality. So if you did not watch that, I will leave a link to yesterday's live stream which you can watch and do all of that stuff. So right after this video, you guys will have the full code in the description down below, so you guys could check and go over the code and do the project from there. So in this particular video, what we will be doing is one particular feature, which is the invite feature. So an admin in the platform should be able to invite another user to the platform. So it's going to be an admin specific functionality. So we'll also have authenticated authentication directives for authorization directives for that. So we'll also be working on that. We'll also be creating some custom directives for formatting date and all those kind of stuff. So let's get right into the code and let's create those functionalities. And also guys, thank you so much for 1500 subscribers. I guess we are really more than that, 1570 subscribers or something. So thank you so much for all of you guys for subscribing. Make sure if you guys are not subscribed, you guys can click on the red button and subscribe to my channel. You can also leave a like on this video, leave a comment. If you guys have any questions, I will make sure I try my best to answer all of the questions. If you guys have any doubts, also leave it in the comments. And let's get started. And thank you so much for 1500 subscribers, guys. Let's get to 2000 subscribers by the end of this month. So thank you so much for all of you guys. So okay, let's get started. So there's one thing that we missed in yesterday's live stream, which was to extend our post schema, Mongoose schema, to have timestamps, so that we have access to the created at and updated at field, so that we know when we updated it and created it. So in case we are creating a client for it, we know when it was created and we can show it to the client and all those kind of stuff. So you guys can add a timestamp. So previously it was like this. What you have to do is say timestamps to be true. Let me move my mic. I think, yeah, timestamps true. So now we have access to timestamps. We should also change this, change the type definition of the post to accept created at and updated at. Created at will be a string which is non-nullable, so it cannot be null. It will always be some value in there. This is also updated at is also a string, as dates are string which come from MongoDB. So we have created at and updated at right here. But for some posts that we created yesterday, we won't be having this field. So let's just remove the non-nullable field, non-nullable exclamation mark from here. And once we do the cleanup, we can erase all of the posts from the database and then do all basically make this non-nullable. So as this is done, we have to create our invite functionality. So how invite functionality is going to work is that you will have a specific resolver for inviting a user. So you give the email of the user and the role of the user, and only an admin should be able to invite. So for now we won't do that. We won't restrict it to an admin, but once the entire thing is done, at the end we'll restrict to the admin, because it will be extra hassle if we have to do that. So we'll obviously implement that authorization directive to our invite functionality. So you should be able to send the email of the person you want to invite and the role of that person. Maybe he's a member or an admin. He also could be an admin. So once we're signing up, we do an extra check whether that email the person is signing up with is in the invites collection. And if he's there, then we make the field invited to be true. And basically you can sign up with email and password. So that's how we are going to accept invites into a platform. And also, even if the person is not invited, he could obviously sign up, because this is an open platform. Okay, it's an open platform. So let's go down to mutation. Let's create a new mutation to invite invite, let's say invite user, which will take in an import of it should be a custom input type. So let's create that. Import invite user input. It's gonna have email, which should be of type string, and role. So it should be role should be an enum. So let's create that enum. Should be at the top. Let's say enum and let's say role. That's going to open up the brackets, and the first role that we need is member, and the other one is an admin. So mostly everyone's a member, default everyone's a member. So we will do the cleanup once we have done with the resolvers. Let's clean up MongoDB and all those kind of stuff. Okay, should open up the GraphQL playground. Okay, so the invite user input is done. We have created the role. So role should be of type role, and it should be non-nullable. And the invite user input, and that's going to return a new user, or it could be only the email of that user, because once we invite a user, we are not actually creating a user, but creating an invite document inside of an invite collection. So we'll create a new model for that as well. So let's say right over here, type invite user output, or what we can start with is to create a new model for invite and then create a type definition for that and then return that invite. So let's go to model, let's create an invite, but before even that, let's extend our user schema to accept two separate, it should be one extra field, which should be invited, which should be of type boolean, and we'll also have role, which will be of type string, and we will have enum. So there should be enums. It's member and an admin, but in default, so in case an enum is not passed, by default the user signing in will be a member. So that's how we define the role. Obviously, when we do this right now, we won't get access to the role and invited because we don't have any use of these fields yet. So let's add invited and role in our type definitions as well. Let's go here, invited, which should be a boolean, and role, which will be of type role, and that is non-nullable because we do need a role in order to do authorization and stuff. So as that is done, let's create our invite user model, invite.js. Let's import mongoose. Let's create a new schema, invite schema equals new mongoose schema, and this will have two properties, which is email, which will be of type string, and an email is required to create to invite a new user, and same here, there should be a role, which should be a type string, and it should be enums. So enums basically mean there should be you could only add values which are of these two values. So it should be either member or an admin. So only these two fields can be added into role. So role should be only equal to member or admin. It cannot be equals to anything else. So default is member. So the same here. And let's create a new mongoose model for this. Const invite equals mongoose dot model. Say invite schema, and let's export the invite model. So as that is done, let's go ahead and create a new type definition for that. Let's go down user, let's create invite and email, which will be of type string, and role, which will be of type role, which is non-nullable as well, because we do have a default value, so it won't be null anytime. So right now we do have invite. So what we can do is, as input we can take invite user input, which is email and role, and we can return an invite type, because we'll be creating an invite in our MongoDB database. So we will actually get access to all of that information, which is email and role. So we can actually return that particular data, which should be of this data structure, which is invite type. Okay, so email and role is here. The mutation is also done. Invite user. Okay, let me get this side by side so we can start working on this. Like this. So if we go to invite, let's go to mutations right here. Let's go down below, create post, and let's create invite user. Obviously this will be an asynchronous operation, because we'll be dealing with the database. Asynchronous operation. So the first argument is root, which we don't need. Second argument is the args, which we will get from GraphQL Playground or the client that we are using. Other one is the context, and the other one after context is the info, which we don't need right now. And also for the context, we need to update the models inside of the context. If you followed a previous video, we actually, if I go to index.js inside of models, we actually import all of the models and export it from here. And if I go to index.js, I'm actually sending all of the models inside of the context in Apollo server. So I can access all of the models through the context inside of each resolver, rather than needing to import everything. So it makes it easier for testing as well, in case we want to do that. We will have a separate video for testing queries, mutations, resolvers and stuff. So we're passing it down in context. So the way we access it is context.models, and models is in itself is an object which has user property and the user model and the post model. One thing we forgot to add is the invite model. So import that, and we export invite as well. So right now we have access to the invite model inside of the context. So right here, before we invite a user, we have to check whether the user is already invited. But yeah, that is one validation in terms of database. We also want to do some data validation, just to check if the email property and the role property is there. So we need to add the validation. So let's go ahead and create that. Let's go to validation, which will be a folder, and let's create invite validation.js, and let's import Joy. Joy is the data validation package that we're using. Let me just copy one of the validation that we did. It's going to be pretty similar, so just don't want to repeat it. This is going to be invite user validation. This is going to be invite user input, and this is going to be invite schema. The schema is totally different, which should be email, should be joy.string, and it is required, and it should be a string, and it should be an email, so it will run a regex and check if it's an email, and it should be a role. There should be a role, so there should be joy.string, and that is required as well. Right here we get destructure the error property from Joy, so it will actually validate. So let's say invite schema, and it will validate against the input that we are getting, and that will have an error property in it. It will be an object, so we get the error property, then we return it. So right now we can access this inside of a resolver. I think it's an asynchronous operation, so we can go to resolvers, we can get the error from await. So before that, let's get the input from the args, because as you guys can see, input is the keyword that we're using, so it will come as the arguments that we're getting, and there'll be input property in it because that's the name we specified. We could also change it, there is no specific naming convention, but this is what we are using across our application. So we are extracting that input, which will have all the inputs that we are passing in the GraphQL playground. And let's get the error from, what is it, invite validation, and let's pass in the input that we're getting, and let's check if there is an error. So if there is an error, it will return us the message of that error. That's why we use Joy. So we have custom message for each of the validation. So let's say we need dot minimum. So if I go to invite validation, if I say email should be dot min 2, if the user input is the email is just, let's say, one letter, just for example, it will return us a suitable validation message. It will say email should be at least 2 characters or something. So that's that. So if there is an error, we throw a new error with error.details and the first property in it, and then the message. So we cannot just return an array for the client, we'll just return the message, so he can the client can send it maybe in a snack bar or an alert or something, or just console log that. So okay, if there is an error, we throw an error. So let's just check whether that error part is working. So let's open up the terminal, npm start, server is running, and it should also connect to database. Okay, let's go to Google Chrome. Let's create a new tab for inviting a new user. Okay, let me exit full screen. Okay, right here let's create a new mutation for inviting a new user. I'll say mutation invite user, and let's give a variable of input so that we get access to all of the variables through query variables right here, rather than having to put an object here itself. Mutation invite user, and let's give all the params here. It should be input. So when I refresh, it should actually work. Invite user, and let me open that brackets. Now if I put the params, maybe it should work. Okay, I'll just say invite user input, that's non-nullable, and that will return the role. I'm not sure what the error is. Input of type is required. Okay, so I'll put input will be equals to the input variable that we have, so which is this. It will return the role, but we don't have any, we're not sending any data. So let's just play this. Input of required type was not provided. Okay, let's provide that. That will be an object, and what we need is email, is it here, gmail.com, and role should be a member. Let's go here, and basically it should not match anything. That's what we need. Got invalid value, role does not exist in enum. Okay, let's not have that. Let's not send an email. Email is not allowed to be empty, which is coming from Joy. If I just type in a name, it says email must be a valid email. I'll say test@gmail.com, and it's basically now those errors are not showing because all of the validation points are passing, and we're not actually returning anything in the form of an invite user. So close this. We'll go to invite user, invite right here. There should be an email or a role which is being returned from this resolver, because we're not doing anything with the database yet. We are not returning the invited user. So let's do that. That's why we get this error, because when we are not returning anything, so it's just null, because we have put non-nullable role here. Okay, so let's create a new invited user. New invite will be equals to new context.models.invite, and let's pass in the input, and let's say invite will be equals to await new invite.save. You should save it to the database. So new invite, new context.models.invite, that's okay. And once that is done, we just return the invite, which will be a form, email and role. So let's go here, let's say shanjai@gmail.com, and the role is a member. If I put that, we have actually invited that user, so it's in that collection. If I request for the email, it's also sending me that particular email. But one thing that we forgot to do is to check whether that person is already invited. So as you saw, I have actually ran this query mutation and I am already invited, but if I do that again, I'm invited again. So that should not happen. So before we save it, let's say invites will be equals to await context.models.invite.find, and let's give a property saying email should be equals to input.email. Basically what we are checking is to find in the database whether the email that the person input is already existing in the invites collection. So it will return an array of all of the invites if there is any invites. So if the invites dot length is not equals to 0, basically if the person is already invited, if that email is already existing in the database, the length of the invites collection array won't be 0, it will be 1 or 2. In that case, we just want to throw an error and block the user from inviting a new user. Throw new error saying users already invited. Let's not do that. So right now, if I do the same mutation, which is just with this email, it should not work. User is already invited, because the array that we're getting through this find, it is returning an array with maybe 2 or 3 invites with the same email. So it will just throw there and just block it from saving in the database. So as this is right now done, let's just go to our database and check how it looks. Maybe we can do a cleanup and do everything from the first, which is to delete all the users, delete all the posts and everything. So let me log in. Okay. Log in with Google. This account. Okay. Don't have anything here. My Wi-Fi is kind of very slow, guys, so sorry for that. Okay, so Studio Backend is the project that we created. So let's go to the collections and see how our models are there. So invites is a new collection that we created. As you guys can see, there are 3 invites that we created right now. So let's delete all 3 and do it from the first. So also go to users, so then we can create new user with a role and stuff like that. There are 4 users currently, which we don't need. Okay, the users collection is also cleaned up. You can also clean up the posts. I think there are so many posts. 7 of them. Okay, we'll just have some posts here, does not matter. So let's go to sign up. So in a normal case, when the user is invited, you would have to send an email to that invited user, and he will click on a link and he would come to the sign up page and then sign in, and you would run all of these mutations. But right now we don't have a client and all those stuff, so we're just doing it without an email. Sending an email is quite easy, so if you guys want any video with like sending emails using SendGrid and GraphQL, let me know down in the comments, so we'll make a video about that. So when we're creating a user, we want to check if that particular user is an invited user. So at that point, if a user is invited, we go to user, the invited type should be true, will be true. We'll set that to be true, else we'll just set that to be false. So let's hash the password right here. So it doesn't need, this process doesn't need to block the user, in the sense if the person is invited, we don't need to block the user saying you're not allowed to sign up. It's just a point for us just to check if the person is invited or not, and then set the invited property to be true or false based on that. So let's do that. So let's say is invited will be equals, so let await context.models dot invite dot find. So inside of the invites collection, we want to check if there is a person who is invited with the invited has an email with the email that is already being sent to the create user mutation. Sorry guys, I just messed up that. But then when we are signing up, when we are sending an email through the input, we should check in the invites collection if we have a person who has been invited with that particular email. So let's do that. So import.email. So this will return an array of all of the invites. So if the person is invited, if the length of the array is greater than 1, it means the person is invited. It won't be great, it will only be 1, it won't be greater than 1, because in the invites in invite user, we are checking if the person is already invited. We won't let the person to be invited again. At that point we won't have one or more invites with the same email. So that is okay. So when we are creating a new user, which is in here, when we're creating a new user, we can also set the invited property to be, which is to be, if invited is invited dot length, or else rather than that we can just do find one, which won't be an array, which will just be an object. So at this point we don't need to check if the length of the array is greater, because there'll be only one object which we'll get, obviously, because we have the validation points for that. So invited, if there is an is invited property, then is invited is true, else it will be false. And also one thing is we need to add a role. So if you go to type definitions, user should be having a role, and also for sign up user input, which should be somewhere here. So create user input, where is it? Over here we should accept a role, and it's non-nullable. We need to get that role. Yeah, so invited is there, and we'll also set the role to be what is it, input dot role. So if there is no role, or let's not make this non-nullable, if there is no role, MongoDB will automatically make this to be member. We should also change this is in our data validation, basically in our auth validation, because the role property will be passed into this, and it wouldn't exist in the schema, so it would throw up an error specifically for that, and it wouldn't resolve. So let's add it here. Resolve in the sense Joy would like say role is not part of the schema and all those stuff. So joy dot string, let's just have role is joy dot string, not required or anything. So role is there, role is equals to input dot role when we're creating it. And I think that is perfect. Okay, let me extend this. Okay, this is done. We are passing the invited role. We go to invite user. We're also able to invite a new user. We're creating it. We can send a role, all those stuff. Okay, let's go right now and check if all of this stuff are working. So let me invite a new user, Shanjai@gmail.com, with the role of member. If I play that, it should work. If I run it again, it shouldn't work. So user already invited. So if I sign up with this particular email, it should have an invited property in it and a role property in it, and the invited property should be true. So that's how it should work. Let me get the name, email, password, role, and the invited property. So what is the email? Sanjay@gmail.com. Sanjay@gmail.com. May also send a role. One thing that I guess you should do is, if the person is already invited, they already have a role in them. So that is something we have to put in our role. We cannot accept role as an input when we are signing in, which is one of the things I shouldn't have done. So role will be equal to invited is invited dot role. Just make this to invited user. So the role should be equals to invited user dot role. So the user role that is already in the invites collection, which we already invited, so there should be a role in them already. That is the role that we are passing here as well when we are signing up. In case if there is no role, it will just in default make it to admin member. Sorry, I guess this is okay. Okay, let's run this and check whether everything is working. So role is a member and invited is true. So all of this stuff is working. Invited is true. Let's just try and put a different email. Sanjay123 connected property role of null. Okay, role in default should be equals to admin, should be member, sorry. So let me just console.log the user. Let's go to the user model. The role should be in default a member, so it should actually work. Let me console log. If I play, it's not actually console.log. So why isn't it logging? So create user, console.log user, property role of null. Okay. So okay, there is no invited user at this point. So let's just put the question mark. So what the error is, in invited user we are only doing find one. So in this case we have not invited the user with the email Sanjay123. So if there is no invited user object, the object is empty, so it's basically null. So if I say object dot role, there is no role property inside the object. That's why it's showing that error. So if I just put a question mark, or let me just do this. So if there is an invited user, I'm more clean, you could read it properly. then you put invited user dot role. So if there is an object inside of it, if there are properties inside of the object, and if there is an object returned, then it will take the role of that, or else MongoDB will automatically say it's a member. Fair and it should work right now. User validation failed. Role null is not a valid enum value for path role. Let me just console.log. It's not console or logging anything. So let me console.log invited user. So the invited user is null. So this should basically pass. Let's just try this. Okay, right now it's working, because as we were checking for the invited user to be there, if it's null, it was not working for some reason. I'm not sure. Should have worked. If the invited user this should basically work. Okay, for some reason it's not working, so let's just have it like this. So right now we also have another error in this create user, which is we are able to sign up users again and again with the same email and password. So we should not allow that. Before we do anything like hash password or anything, once the data validation is done, let's check if the user is already there. Await context.models.user.find in email with the input.email, and if the users dot length is equals to 0, basically not equals to 0. If there is already a user with this email, then we want to throw a new error. User with this email already exists. So this should basically throw an error for us. Okay, so it's working. So I guess that's pretty much it for this video, guys. We were able to create the invite user functionality and also extend our user model and user type definitions, and new mutations, extend the create user mutation, extend all the mutations and queries as well. We added roles and stuff, and also one specific thing that we didn't do, which is to authorize the person to only be admin when creating or inviting a user. Let's go auth directives. Let's make a new authenticated authorization directive, but before that let's create a type definition for that. Let's go to type defs, and I'll say directive authorized on field definition, and authorized is the keyword, so let's use that. Let's create a new class saying authorization directive extends schema directive visitor. So we basically check if the parameter that we're getting is equals to whatever it's supposed to be. So if the person is an admin is what we're going to check. So let's do that. One thing we won't be able to do is if we are not storing the role inside of the JWT. So at that point we won't be able to get the role into this directive. So let's do that. Let's go to helpers, or let's go to create user or sign in, and let's just pass the ID and the role, user.role. So we get access to the role of the user and then a parameter from the directive. So let's just match up that and check whether both of those are the same. So this should accept a parameter of type role. It should be a string. In default it should be member, or else we should not have this, because in the context we should be having it. If not, we won't be able to authorize a user. So let's visit field definition, get the field. Let's create a resolver with field.resolve. If this is not there, there should be a default field resolver, and let's run a arrow function. Once the field resolves, we get the root, arguments, context, and the info. Sorry for the background noise, guys. Okay, so once the field dot resolve, we want to check if the so from the arguments we will get the role and then the rest of the parameters. So you should check if the role is equals to context.user.role, and if it's not equals to that, basically if the user who is signed in, so we decrypt that token and have it in our JWT, which we have in our JWT. If the role is not equals to admin, which we will pass when we are putting it in the field definition, then we should just throw a new error saying user not authorized. Else we'll just return resolver, and let's pass root and rest of the properties. We'll pass context, and then we'll pass in the info. Let's also export this authorization directive. So basically what we're doing is so once we do it, you guys will understand better. So let's go to type definitions. We need a role, so we need to run the authorized directive when we are inviting a new user, authorized, and the role that we are passing is admin. Okay, the role is admin. I guess role is of type role, which is here. So we'll obviously get access to the enums which are in the type definition. I guess the role is equals to type role, and role should be an admin. So this is where we are passing that in order to perform this particular mutation, the role should be an admin. So this is where we specify what role the person should be. And here we could, in order to create a user, we could basically say authorized, and the role should be a member, and this will perfectly work because the user who is normally signed in is a member role, has a role of member, and then he could basically run that operation. But if it's a admin role, it should be only able to run the functionalities of admin. So role admin is also done. Let's go to index.js and add this. Let's say authorized will be equals to authorization directive, which it will import automatically. With type definitions, it should be here, or directives. Okay, let's create a user with a role property of admin. Let's run it. Input got invalid value. Okay, you should not be able to sign up with admin, maybe. um, okay, let me invite a new user with Sanjay 777 and should be an admin. Let's have it like that. When I hit play, okay, the role should be of type admin, right? Why isn't this working? I mean, nothing is working right now. Cannot read property role of null. Okay, I think it's something from here. So we should have it in the header. Shanjai dev. So I'll use the same password and sign in as well. So I'll get the token. Okay, let me copy this token and add it in the HTTP header. Because the previous HTTP header didn't have the role property, just had the email and the ID of the user. So plate user is not authorized, so the user is a member type. But let's just say here, let's just go to MongoDB and change the user type to be a role. Let's refresh to be, the role to be an admin. Go to users. Let's make, what is this user? Shanjai dev to be role admin. Let's update it. And right now, if I sign in Shanjai dev, the token will have the admin property in it, and it will be, the role property in it, and it will be an admin. Let me just run this. Use authorized. Okay. Let me just console.log context.user. So the role is an admin. Console.log role. Okay, role is undefined. Let's just console log the arguments. Okay, the role property is there. So const role will destructure it from the arguments, and then I guess right now it might work. Okay. Console.log role, and let's console.log both of them. Undefined. Args. So both of them are working. Dot role dot toString maybe. Type of args dot role context dot this. So undefined. Okay. Okay, so it should be field.args, I guess. Okay, sorry. Wait. Field.args. The email is this. Okay, let me just check what I have done. Actually, it should be this dot args. Just totally forgot. There's role. This is dot args. So we'll just check if role is not equals to context dot user dot role. Basically do that. Rest is not defined. Okay. Can return null for non-nullable field. Let's pass this. Okay, I'm not sure what error I have made. Context at user is not equal to this. So return the resolver with the root arguments, context, and then the info. Cannot return none for non-nullable field mutation dot invite user. Okay, throw new error, field resolve. Okay, it should be field.resolve. It's the same mistake that I made. Okay, let me play that right now. Okay, right now I can do this. If I change the role to be a member, okay, the user is already invited. So I guess that's pretty much it, guys. I guess it was a pretty long video, but I hope you guys learned something from it, how to create directives and all those stuff. There'll be more videos coming up on GraphQL, such as how to do custom directives, how to host your API on Heroku, how to do client-side stuff with Apollo client. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm sorry if this video was too late, if I taught something, if I did something mistake or something. Let me know in the comments down below. I'm also a beginner in GraphQL, so let me know in the comments. Let me know if you guys enjoyed this video or not. If you guys want to see more videos of this, have any more projects to create using GraphQL, and leave a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel. Thanks for 1000 subscribers, 1500 subscribers, and that's pretty much it, guys. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Peace.